Sam Quinones, Dreamland, The True Tale of America's Opiate Epidemic. Prepare to delve into the harrowing journey of America's opiate epidemic, as narrated in Sam Quinones, Dreamland, The True Tale of America's Opiate Epidemic. This book summary provides an eye-opening account of the rise of OxyContin, a drug introduced by Purdue in the 1990s, and how its marketing tactics misled doctors and patients about its addictive risks. Gain insights into the emergence of heroin-seeking Xalisco boys and the ever-growing economy of pill mills. Discover how the quest for a non-addictive painkiller and misinformation molded a devastating epidemic, affecting millions of lives.
OxyContin's dangerous legacy. The roots of the opiate crisis in the United States can be traced back to the early 1980s, with the release of Purdue's Contin, a morphine-based, time-release pill. When OxyContin was introduced in 1996, it was marketed as a one-size-fits-all solution for doctors dealing with chronic pain. Aggressive marketing campaigns emphasized that its innovative time-release coating would lower potential addiction rates. However, the endorsement overlooked the differences in controlled usage, leading to widespread abuse, addiction, and a radical transformation of the pain management industry. The current opiate crisis in the United States may seem new, but it has a long history that began in the 1980s. In 1984, Purdue launched Contin, a morphine pill with a time-release coating intended for patients experiencing severe pain from surgeries or terminal illnesses. The product's success led to the release of another pain relief drug in 1996 called OxyContin, which contained oxycodone, a derivative of opium. Like Contin, OxyContin had a time-release coating, but the two drugs differed in other ways. The FDA approved OxyContin based on Purdue's assertion that the time-release coating would minimize addiction by circumventing the fast-acting highs and lows typically associated with opiates. Consequently, they allowed the drug to be marketed with a unique, low potential for abuse, safety label. This claim would become the foundation of OxyContin's promotion, positioning it as a virtual risk-free solution to chronic pain. They aggressively advertised that it had an addiction rate of less than 1% among patients. However, this low rate was attributed to the controlled hospital settings in which Contin was administered. Doctors outside of hospitals, accustomed to prescribing opiates for chronic pain, began using OxyContin. Unlike traditional opiates that were accompanied by weaker dosages and abuse-deterrent agents, OxyContin was more potent and considered safe only because of its time-release component, something easily overlooked by doctors. Purdue wasted no time capitalizing on this, sending representatives to promote their product to doctors with all costs paid vacations and extravagant luncheons. They also offered doctors OxyContin merchandise and held medical seminars at luxurious resorts. The aggressive marketing resulted in huge profits, with Purdue's sales tripling and bonuses jumping from $1 million in 1996 to $40 million in 2001. By 2003, primary care physicians with minimal pain management training mainly prescribed OxyContin. Thus, the pain management industry was revolutionized. Prescribing for pain became the norm rather than the exception, leading to the widespread prescribing of OxyContin, and consequently, the birth of the current opiate crisis. Millennia-Long opiate infatuation. For thousands of years, humans have reveled in the effects of opiates, with opium's appearance in Sumerian, Egyptian, Greek, Indian, and Arab cultures. Morphine, an active molecule within opium, gained popularity as a painkiller during the 19th century due to its effectiveness in dulling pain. However, the struggle to find non-addictive alternatives resulted in the synthesis of heroin by Dr. Alder Wright in 1874. Although initially advertised as a safe option, heroin caused addiction rates to skyrocket. The chemistry underlying the addictive properties of opiates such as morphine and heroin has been understood to be linked to the mu-opioid receptors in the brain, triggering euphoria and numbing sensations. Unfortunately, the severe withdrawal symptoms and lingering morphine molecules make recovery a daunting ordeal for addicts. The fascination with opiates can be traced back thousands of years, appearing in historical accounts from ancient Sumerians, Egyptians, Greeks, Indians, and the Arab Empire. The Sumerians even dubbed opium as the joy plant. Though its active molecule, morphine, is present in several other plants, opium is characterized by the highest potency. Ever since morphine's isolation in the early 1800s, its efficacious pain-killing properties granted it widespread use, including during wartime. Alexander Wood, the hypodermic needle inventor, hoped that his creation would minimize drug abuse as users could measure their intake. Regrettably, his wife became the first recorded fatality resulting from an intravenous opiate overdose. In a booming U.S. market, 19th-century patent medicines advertised as miracle cures often contained opiates unbeknownst to consumers. These products were so popular that annual sales reached $75 million by the early 20th century. Amid this period, Dr. Alder Wright synthesized the potent opioid heroin in the search for non-addictive morphine alternatives. Despite the doctor's assurances, heroin's highly addictive traits soon became apparent, as did surges in addiction rates. The addictive characteristics of morphine can be attributed to the molecule's sleek assimilation with the brain's mu-opioid receptors. These receptors usually respond to endorphins, releasing pleasure, but morphine's presence overwhelms them, producing intense euphoria and numbness. This pleasure, however, is countered by excruciating withdrawal symptoms that addicts must endure, including insomnia, intense pain, and diarrhea, which can last for weeks. In many cases, the severity of withdrawals drives addicts to extreme measures for their next dose. The lingering nature of the morphine molecule, which remains intact in the body instead of breaking down into glucose, exacerbates these problematic withdrawal symptoms. Decoding the pseudoaddiction phenomenon. A single paragraph published in 1980 inadvertently contributed to an opioid crisis, due to the misinterpretation and overemphasis of its content. The medical field's growing interest in pain management led to the illusion of an underdiagnosed problem, magnifying the relevance of the misleading research, ultimately creating the disputed term, pseudoaddiction. In 1980, a ripple would begin that would course through medical history for years to come. A snippet of a study conducted by Dr. Herschel Jick of Boston University School of Medicine and his graduate student, Jane Porter, discovered that out of roughly 12,000 patients treated with narcotics at the hospital, a mere 4 suffered from addiction following their treatment. Little did they know, this casual letter published in New England Journal of Medicine would become the catalyst for widespread misunderstanding and misrepresentation. During the same period, doctors were gaining a renewed curiosity in pain management. Long criticized for inadequately addressing patients' chronic pain concerns, medical professionals began to emphasize the importance of this aspect of treatment. In 1996, the American Pain Society even designated pain as the 5th vital sign. This newfound focus on pain wound up paralleling an escalating push to prescribe opioids, a treatment often argued to have an extremely low potential for abuse. Fearful of litigation due to neglect of patients' pain, physicians began liberally doling out opioids under the assumption that they were supported by the study authored by Jick and Porter. Unfortunately, many individuals were quoting this letter without actually understanding its content, inaccurately passing it off as a thorough, scientifically backed research. Misrepresentations in publications like Scientific American and Time reinforced this notion, causing medical professionals to scrap previous wisdom regarding opioids. The consequences of this misinformation led to the birth of the term pseudoaddiction. Pseudoaddiction reflects the appearance of addiction but is, in reality, a mere cry for adequate pain relief. In these cases, doctors were advised to increase opioid dosages aggressively to handle the discomfort. In summary, the misinterpretation of Jick and Porter's letter, combined with the medical community's amplified interest in effectively treating pain, forged a dangerous path. This misunderstanding led to the era of pseudoaddiction, which stemmed from the incorrect belief that an extensive study supported the aggressive prescribing of opioids. Rise of Portsmouth's pill mills. Once a thriving American industrial town, Portsmouth, Ohio suffered from globalization and saw its economy decline. By the 1990s, the city became a part of America's Rust Belt and witnessed the emergence of a new industry, pill mills. The struggling population turned to Medicare cards to fuel their addiction to OxyContin and other prescription drugs. People found ways to game the system, such as trading pills on the black market and exploiting those with drug dependencies. An increase in applications for supplemental security income and the presence of less reputable doctors facilitated the growth of this dangerous sub-economy. Portsmouth, Ohio, was a flourishing industrial town in its heyday, but globalization crippled the city, causing factories to shut down and jobs to vanish. By the late 20th century, it joined the ranks of the many declining cities within America's Rust Belt. In the wake of this economic downturn emerged an insidious industry, pill mills. Job opportunities were scarce in Portsmouth, but acquiring Medicare cards was considerably easier. The burgeoning economy was built upon these pill mills, where clinics churned out prescription after prescription with little care or oversight. The number of locals applying for the Supplemental Security Income Government program notably spiked between 1998 and 2008. Patrons of pill mills stocked up on drugs like OxyContin and engaged in lucrative black market trade for their necessities. Some entrepreneurial individuals even exploited addicts, taking them to clinics, covering their fees, and garnering half the prescribed pills as payment. Before long, an oxy pill would fetch $1 per milligram, enabling trade for various goods, from electronics to household essentials. The illegal market birthed related sub-economies, too. Drug buyers occasionally needed clean urine to pass tests and secure prescriptions, resulting in a profitable niche for purveyors, especially suppliers of rare, untainted child's urine, which could fetch up to $40 per bottle. Many pill mills were not established by doctors, so their success hinged on partnering with less reputable medical practitioners. This attracted those seeking temporary employment due to licensure issues, substance abuse, or insurance woes, particularly through locum tenens lists. Eventually, this thriving ecosystem of abuse caught the attention of established drug dealers, further expanding the cycle of addiction and illicit gain. The Xalisco Boys' Heroin Revolution. During the 1980s, the Rust Belt saw a surge in oxy use, while a group called the Xalisco Boys began selling black tar heroin in California's San Fernando Valley. The Xalisco Boys, originating from a Mexican village, revolutionized the heroin trade with their unique retail model that maintained the drug's potency and leveraged a franchise-like system. This approach helped the cells thrive and rake in substantial profits. As OxyContin consumption soared across the Rust Belt, the Xalisco Boys emerged in the San Fernando Valley, where they started peddling black tar heroin to local addicts. Hailing from a small village in Mexico, these dealers quickly achieved success by adopting a revolutionary retail strategy. Unlike other kingpins, who sold low-quality heroin on a wholesale basis, the Xalisco Boys focused on retail sales. This allowed them to maintain the drug's potency instead of diluting it through a chain of middlemen. Sourced directly from poppy fields near their hometown, the black tar heroin had a high purity level that attracted a loyal customer base. The Xalisco Boys further distinguished themselves by operating in small, structured cells reminiscent of franchises. After securing supplies from a northbound wholesaler, each cell, consisting of an owner, manager, phone operator, and drivers, would sell the drugs at the street level. The operators fielded calls from addicts, orchestrating fleet-footed handoffs with drivers who carried single doses of heroin in small, inconspicuous balloons. If confronted by law enforcement, drivers could discreetly swallow the evidence, safeguarding both the product and their cell. Placing loyalty above temptation, the Xalisco Boys paid their drivers a steady salary, removing any incentive to cheat the addicts or dilute the drugs. As a result of these innovative methods, the cells turned impressive profits, with daily earnings potentially tripling to $15,000 within a year. Thus, the Xalisco Boys' cunning approach revolutionized the heroin market, benefiting both their business and the addicts seeking a higher quality product. Rise of Xalisco Boys. The invention of methadone in 1947 was initially seen as a breakthrough in treating drug addiction. Methadone clinics aimed to supply addicts with a regulated amount of methadone to prevent their addiction from worsening. However, over time, for-profit clinics began reducing the methadone dosage to wean addicts off heroin completely, leaving patients craving opiates. This created an opportunity for the Xalisco Boys, a drug cartel that expanded rapidly across the San Fernando Valley in the 1990s. Distributed free samples of heroin and provided phone numbers for addicts to call them, they quickly became the dominant drug dealers in many cities, causing a significant surge in heroin addiction and overdoses in the late 1990s. The basis of methadone treatment stemmed from its unique characteristic as an opiate. Unlike other opiates, methadone users did not need to constantly increase their dosage. As a result, methadone clinics were established with the primary goal of managing addiction by providing a controlled supply of methadone to patients. However, the focus shifted as for-profit clinics emerged, aiming to eliminate heroin use altogether by steadily reducing methadone doses. This development led to a phenomenon where patients were left craving for opiates, driving a desperate search for alternative sources. The Xalisco Boys, seeing an untapped market, devised a strategy to tap into the methadone clinic clienteles. The cartel's drivers would show up at these clinics distributing free heroin samples and phone numbers for further orders. They honed this tactic by training new drivers to approach addicts inconspicuously and offer them the illicit drug. With an expanding clientele, the Xalisco Boys quickly gained dominance in the drug trade throughout numerous cities. Their impact was evident at detox centers operated by Central City Concern, a nonprofit in Portland, Oregon. In the mid-1990s, only 5 to 10% of their patients sought help for opiate detox. However, by 1997, the number skyrocketed to 50%, indicating a surge of heroin addiction fueled by the Xalisco Boys' narcotics. It took Portland officials until 1999 to acknowledge the mounting crisis. Tragically, heroin-related deaths had risen from 10 in 1991 to 111 in 1999, establishing it as the second leading cause of death for men between 20 and 54 years old. The rapid growth of the Xalisco Boys' heroin empire was directly linked to the unintended consequences of methadone clinic practices, culminating in widespread addiction and overdose epidemic in the 1990s. Xalisco Boys' customer-centric approach. The Xalisco Boys stood out among heroin dealers with their customer-centric approach that targeted middle-class white kids by implementing effective marketing tactics and prioritizing customer satisfaction. Their unique business model minimized risk through nonviolent operations and independent cells, ensuring competition and expansion. While law enforcement intervened with a large-scale operation, it unintentionally worsened the situation by leaving a void for competitors to increase their heroin supply across the country. The Xalisco Boys were an innovative group of heroin dealers distinguished by their keen understanding of customer service and convenience. Focusing on middle-class white kids, they took the initiative to actively approach potential customers by offering free samples and pricing incentives. Their commitment to customer satisfaction involved follow-up calls, going-away presents of free heroin for rehab-bound customers, and even providing recently released prisoners with heroin to ensure their return as clients. In a bold testament to their service quality, an undercover narcotics cop in Charlotte, North Carolina, deemed their service model superior to many legitimate retailers. The Xalisco Boys' risk management strategies, such as avoiding violence and carrying limited heroin supplies, ensured lenient legal consequences upon apprehension, thereby attracting a continuous stream of aspiring dealers seeking financial gains with minimal risks. Moreover, the group structure allowed for each cell to operate independently like a separate franchise. This facilitated competition among cells, driving them to excel in customer service and maintain competitive prices. This competitive spirit also pushed them to expand their reach into less saturated markets and enlist the help of addicts to bring in new customers or to gather information on fresh territories, rewarding them with free products for their assistance. The expansive and deeply rooted Xalisco network eventually caught the attention of law enforcement, prompting the FBI and the Drug Enforcement Agency to launch Operation Tar Pit on June 15, 2000. This operation represented the most expansive drug investigation in U.S. history, with busts spanning 27 cities and 22 states. Though seemingly effective, the operation generated unintended consequences. In taking down the Xalisco boys, Operation Tar Pit created a power vacuum that other heroin suppliers rushed to fill. The persisting presence of addicts and the absence of the Xalisco boys fostered intense competition between new suppliers, consequently leading to reduced prices and increased supply of black tar heroin across the United States. This outcome demonstrated that while the authorities targeted a particular group, they inadvertently exacerbated the very problem they aimed to address. America's opiate explosion. By the 2000s, opiates became the most popular solution for the 100 million chronic pain sufferers in the United States. The country consumed the majority of the world's oxycodone and hydrocodone, making hydrocodone the most prescribed drug in the nation. As opiates became heavily prescribed, recreational use increased, and the user demographic grew younger. Opiate overdose deaths climbed significantly, and emergency room visits skyrocketed. OxyContin, introduced a decade ago, has been abused by millions due to its higher doses and lack of addiction-suppressing chemicals. The alarming increase in heroin use can also be traced back to prescription painkiller abuse. In the early 2000s, it was clear that opiates had taken the pain relief stage by storm. Of the United States' 100 million chronic pain sufferers, most received an opioid treatment. Notably, the country consumed 86% of the world's oxycodone and 99% of its hydrocodone, the latter becoming America's most prescribed drug, with 136 million prescriptions issued per year. As opiate prescriptions skyrocketed, so did recreational use. In less than a decade, 25 million Americans misused prescription pills, a troubling sign of the times. A study conducted in 2004 by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration revealed a worrying trend. The average age of first-time prescription pill abusers was plunging to just 22 years, even below that of first-time marijuana users. Alongside this surge, opiate overdose deaths leaped from 10 per day in 1999 to 48 in 2012. Prescription painkillers also tripled emergency room visits between 2004 and 2011. Most alarmingly, 6.1 million people in the U.S. had abused the opioid OxyContin just a decade after its release, which equated to nearly 2.4% of the nation's entire population. Addiction to opiates such as Lortab and Vicodin has been prevalent for years, but these drugs contained lower doses and addiction-suppressing substances that limited their abuse potential. With the introduction of OxyContin, addicts discovered its significantly higher dosage and sought ways to remove the time-release coating for a more potent high. OxyContin's pure content could then be snorted or injected. Patients who once requested higher doses of Lortab or Vicodin were now being prescribed OxyContin, making abuse more likely due to its stronger potency. Many users escalated from taking pills orally to intravenous use in search of intensified highs. Sadly, this paved the way for heroin addiction, as users familiar with needles turned to the cheaper alternative. Within just 4 years, from 2007 to 2011, the number of U.S. heroin users nearly doubled, with 80% of them initiating their addiction by misusing prescription painkillers. The United States' pervasive opiate crisis can thus be traced back to the surge in specific prescriptions and their resulting misuse. The unmasking of OxyContin. Opiate abuse skyrocketed in the United States, notably in places like the Bottoms, a rundown neighborhood in Lucasville, Ohio. Realizing the perils of opiate prescriptions, Attorney Joe Hale and Ohio health workers Ed Sosi and Christy Beagley took steps towards exposing the connection between painkiller prescriptions and overdose deaths. Their findings ultimately revealed a 97.9% correlation between the two factors from 1999 to 2008. As opiate abuse reached epidemic proportions in the United States, communities across the nation began feeling the impact. Among them was the Bottoms, a struggling neighborhood in Lucasville, Ohio, near Portsmouth. Attorney Joe Hale, a public defender who frequently represented clients in the Bottoms, noticed people talking about pills called OCs. He soon uncovered that many were abusing these pills by injecting them. In 1999, a tragic event sparked Hale's fight for justice. After a local godfather lost his daughter to an OxyContin overdose, Hale filed the first wrongful death lawsuit relating to the drug in 2001. Despite facing opposition from Purdue's powerful legal team, Hale's resolve remained unshaken. Around the same time, Ed Sosi, an Ohio Health Department worker, discovered that accidental poisoning deaths were on the rise. In almost every case, opiates were involved. However, it wasn't until 2007, when Christy Beagley joined the department as his supervisor, that this issue received the attention it deserved. The duo's research exposed a horrifying truth: overdose deaths were on the brink of surpassing car accidents as the leading cause of accidental death in Ohio. This shift marked a disturbing milestone, as cars had long been the primary cause of accidental deaths. By 2008, overdose deaths had taken the top spot, driven largely by the misuse of painkillers. A closer examination of the data revealed a staggering 97.9% correlation between the number of painkillers prescribed and overdose deaths. Both figures had increased by more than 300% between 1999 and 2008, making it difficult to dismiss the relationship between the two. The truth about OxyContin and its role in the opiate crisis was becoming harder to ignore. The opioid crisis confrontation. Recognizing the need to address the root cause of the opioid crisis, U.S. Attorney John Brownlee decided to target Purdue, a major pharmaceutical company, in his fight against the epidemic. In 2001, Brownlee subpoenaed records related to the marketing of OxyContin and found deceptive practices, which he utilized to make a strong case against Purdue. Successfully prosecuting Purdue and subsequently several other pharmaceutical giants, Brownlee's strategic approach helped levy multi-million-dollar fines and raised awareness about the malpractices in the industry. Americans across Ohio, Kentucky, and Virginia were no strangers to the heartbreaking consequences of the opioid crisis. U.S. Attorney John Brownlee realized that a more significant strategy needed to unfold, targeting the source of the issue. Parallel to many other prosecutors, Brownlee initially prosecuted pill mill doctors. However, after a thorough re-evaluation of the situation, he set his sights on Purdue, the pharmaceutical giant behind OxyContin. He subpoenaed all records related to the drug's marketing and discovered deceptive practices that misled the public about its addictive nature in all 50 states. Armed with the evidence, Brownlee filed a case accusing Purdue of criminal misbranding in fall 2006. He exposed Purdue's false advertisements, showing the company had provided no substantiated evidence to the FDA that OxyContin was less addictive compared to other painkillers. The company had also spread misinformation, instructing sales representatives to claim that OxyContin was tougher to abuse than other drugs, a statement unsupported by Purdue's research. Furthermore, Brownlee's case established that Purdue had encouraged reps to falsely advise patients that they could stop using up to 60 milligrams of OxyContin with zero withdrawal symptoms, contradicting their internal study. Purdue ultimately pled guilty to criminal misbranding, paying a $634.5 million fine to dodge prison time for its executives, who received probation and community service sentences. However, Brownlee's pursuit of justice against the pharmaceutical industry didn't stop there. His groundbreaking cases continued, ultimately resulting in companies like Pfizer being fined $3 billion for false advertising of multiple medications. United against the opiate epidemic. The devastating effects of the opiate epidemic in the United States, claiming 16,000 lives annually, remained unacknowledged for years. Parent-led initiatives like Joanna Crone's organization, Solace, aimed to raise public awareness by sharing personal experiences of loss. Meanwhile, people like Brad Belcher in Marion, Ohio, got creative by printing signs to expose the town's hidden heroin problem. This combined with the shocking overdose death of renowned actor Philip Seymour Hoffman in 2014, finally triggered a nationwide realization about the severity of the opiate crisis. For years, the opiate epidemic tearing apart communities across the United States went largely unnoticed. Tragically, it took the loss of 16,000 lives each year for public awareness to develop. Some individuals, like Joanna Crone, turned their personal pain into a mission for change. After losing her son to an OxyContin overdose, Crone founded Solace, a support organization for parents mourning the loss of their children to opioids. By giving talks at schools and expanding Solace to multiple counties, she helped raise crucial awareness about this deadly issue. Public attention was further drawn to the opioid crisis through unique approaches by others impacted by addiction. Brad Belcher, a recovering addict from Marion, Ohio, designed and hung up signs throughout the town, stating, "Heroin is Marion's economy." Though local authorities removed most of the signs, a viral photo taken by a drug dealer ensured Belcher's message wouldn't be silenced. This forced the town to confront its heroin problem head-on. The opiate epidemic finally gained nationwide recognition in the wake of a high-profile tragedy. In 2014, the fatal overdose of celebrated actor Philip Seymour Hoffman served as a wake-up call. In the aftermath of his untimely death, media outlets across the nation shed light on the pervasive opiate crisis that had been devastating communities for 15 years. It was through combined efforts, personal stories, and shocking events that the severity of the epidemic became widely understood and acknowledged. Reversing the pain revolution. After 2 decades, the perception of opiates as a necessary treatment for pain has shifted, with the recognition that these drugs pose significant risks. Up to 24% of patients report aberrant usage. Despite Purdue Pharma's belated efforts to deter OxyContin abuse and the FDA's requirement for addiction education, the fallout from the pain revolution still looms large. However, towns like Portsmouth show that recovering communities can rekindle hope and business opportunities, as former addicts start counseling centers and fitness establishments. This growing sense of community is slowly rejuvenating an area once lost in the grip of addiction. In recent years, the tide has turned regarding the use of opiates for pain management. No longer viewed as essential, these potent drugs are now seen as potentially harmful, with as many as a quarter of patients engaging in problematic use. This change in perception has come too late for some, with Purdue Pharma only incorporating abuse deterrent measures into OxyContin in 2010, 14 years after the drug's introduction. Meanwhile, the FDA has mandated that drug manufacturers provide education to both physicians and patients about the risks of addiction from time-release painkillers. But again, this action came far later than it would have been most effective. Undeterred, OxyContin sales continued to soar, generating $3 billion annually for Purdue Pharma. In contrast, the devastating consequences emerged, with fatal heroin overdoses tripling between 2010 and 2013. In the midst of this crisis, there are glimmers of hope and recovery. Portsmouth, once ravaged by the pain revolution, has begun a remarkable transformation. As the town's former addicts seek healthier lifestyles, gyms and fitness centers are sprouting up. Recoiling from the albatross of addiction, recovered individuals have established counseling services to help others escape the clutches of opiates. Prejudice against former addicts is slowly ebbing, and employment opportunities abound. People are coming from all over the Rust Belt to Portsmouth, seeking to break the debilitating cycles of addiction in a supportive environment. In this once-forgotten town, a burgeoning community spirit may well provide the impetus for a much-needed renaissance.
As the summary of A Dreamland concludes, it is imperative to recognize and acknowledge the effects opiates have had on the United States. The mounting pressure to combat the crisis shows in the increasing number of lawsuits against Purdue and other drug manufacturers, along with the formation of parent support groups and community-driven recovery centers. Education and awareness towards risks of opiate addiction are now on the forefront, and better alternatives in pain management are being sought. This gripping tale of America's opiate crisis leaves readers contemplating the impact caused by a series of unchecked decisions, misinformation, and the relentless pursuit of profits.